When I was 17, I walked into the Houston Museum of Natural History, and it was almost serendipitous that I walked in that day because Lucy, the skeleton from Ethiopia, was there on exhibit only for 1 week. And that made my 17-year-old brain just explode. And so I walked around until I found her, and I stared at her for longer than is probably healthy. Um, but I feel like that makes me especially connected to today's protagonist in our book. Um, so yeah. Hello and welcome to UpperPen. My name is Dakota, and today I am talking with Jennifer Mandula about the Geomagician. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
So I have a deep, deep love of science-y books that are set in a very particular setting.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I'm wondering if you can kind of describe what your book is for people who haven't heard it yet.
Yeah, sure. So the Geomagician is a reimagining of a real paleontologist's life. So her name was Mary Anning, and she was born in 1799 in Lyme Regis, Dorset, England. And she was really poor. They often were relying on parish charity and donations when she was growing up. And Mary kind of self-taught, taught by her father, clawed her way into the center really of the emerging field of paleontology. She found some of the most important paleontological finds of all time. She found the first completed plesiosaur with her brother. She found the first um, ichthyosaur and the first pterosaur in England. And this was right when they were kind of trying to figure out, like, where did these species go, trying to reconcile it with what were considered to be sort of the literal accounts in Genesis. She was right in the middle of that. And because she was a woman, even with these finds, Mary was never recognized by the Geological Society of London. Um, her name would maybe get tossed around occasionally, but these gentlemen scholars who were building the field really took the credit for her finds. And Mary spent most of her life still teetering on that edge of poverty, which is just crazy. And so that's the moment, right, of this story. And what I did is when I learned her story, when I learned her tale, I was just furious for her. And I was like, you know what? This is the kind of story that I don't know, I wish it had gone a different way. And so in my book, The Geomagician, I take Mary's story and a lot of the similar beats of her life, but I put it in a world with magic. And Mary, instead of finding a pterosaur skeleton, finds an egg and it hatches into a pterodactyl that she names Ajax. And being a pragmatic, goal oriented woman, she uses the pterodactyl to try and leverage her way into not the Geological Society, but the Geomagical Society of London. And that's kind of the what kicks off the story.
It also has a bit of a romantic plot to it as well. So for people who might not be so into the science or the magic.
Yeah, yeah. So the Mary in the world that I build, and these most of these characters, there are some characters that are paleontologists. William Buckland is one. He was Mary's real life friend and mentor, and he is a character in the book. But I also made for Mary this sort of cohort of friends, her friends Edgar and Lucy and Henry, who were her friends as teens and now kind of come back into her life as an adult who's almost 30. And Henry is the kind of the boy she once loved. And he has gone on because he is a male and wealthy, has gone on to become sort of this industrialist scholar who is an esteemed geomagician. And Mary and Henry have this teenage love affair that she thinks is sort of an engagement, and then Henry breaks it. And so for many years, they haven't been in touch. But when Mary discovers the egg, Henry reappears in her life. And he says that he just wants her to get the credit that she deserves. And whether we believe him or not, you will have to find out. But yeah, I really enjoyed, I always like books with sort of a romantic subplot. I'm not a primarily romance reader, I'm primarily a fantasy reader. But I always love a romantic subplot. So I think some of their scenes were some of my favorite to write. Um, yeah, so definitely a second chance romance, some rival scholarly action. Should we trust him or not? Those kind of things. Lots of scenes where they're researching in the library and the office together, and there's some romantic tension. Those are my favorite.
I really love her friend Lucy as well, because she's kind of like that Spitfire friend everybody kind of needs in their ear, telling them like, "Hey, go do the thing."
Yeah. Yeah, Lucy is inspired by Elizabeth Philpott, who was um, a real friend of the real Mary Annings. She was kind of a little more middle class than Mary, on the edge of poverty. But the Philpott sisters were also fossil hunters. But I felt like, in terms of character, Mary needed a friend who saw things really differently from her. And so I wanted Lucy to kind of push her into conflicts that Mary, kind of narrowly focused on science, wouldn't otherwise be seeing. Because again, this time of history was just really volatile, and such like it really reminds me of our own time. Like, it was so on the cusp of incredible technological change for their world, and just a huge tipping point. And the social unrest, kind of the frustration, chafing alongside that. I really wanted to play with those issues, but I knew that Mary as a character wasn't interested in those. And so Lucy really serves to kind of pull Mary into some of that and bring those things to the forefront. Or at
So
least I hope she does.
she does. She does very well. She's part of a special group that you hear about in the very beginning, the name of which is eluding me for some reason.
Yes, no, the Prometheans, no
That's it.
problem. Yeah, the Prometheans. They are my fictional reformers, and very much inspired by like the Luddite movement, which was a little bit before the time period of this book, and then the swing riots, which were a little bit after the time period of this book.
So, are you a secret historian? Is that what this is? And
Yeah, no, I do love history, but I've literally always read history with an eye to fiction. Like, even, my favorite class in high school was like AP European history, like loved that class. But I was always thinking about how I could turn it into fiction. So for me, it clearly, history is the details, and the drama of history is what I find fun. Like, the gossip of it. you know, that's my favorite kind of stuff in history. But I love, my brain always is feeding it into a story. How can I twist that? How can I play with that? What an interesting idea for a conflict.
I'm
Um,
I'm nosy enough that I always really enjoy when like Project Guggenheim has the
yeah,
letters from a bunch of people that were just written back and forth that we have, and they're snarky. They were
yeah,
like incredibly snarky people.
yeah. Have you read any of Darwin's letters?
Yes, yeah.
And he's like, I hate everyone. I'm like, yes, Darwin, I feel you.
There's a book called I want to say it's Galileo's Daughter, and
Uh-huh.
there's a bit of snark about there's letters back and forth between the two of them,
Right.
and it's very similar.
Yeah, it reminds you, right, that like history is just a bunch of people doing the same things we were doing, which is like having the same debates. Every parent in history have been like, "Oh, children these days," like when you actually look at primary sources, like we're just always doing and saying the same thing. We're just a bunch of silly people.
Well, I'm glad that you really enjoy history because, like, I love how much you've included here. And then I also saw a post on Instagram the other day talking about why it is called the Victorian era in your book when it might not actually have been the Victorian era.
Yes. Oh, thank you for giving me the opportunity to address this controversy. It's not a controversy. No one cares but me. But uh, so like what you define the Victorian era as is like a little bit up for debate, right? You can mark it very clearly with the beginning and end of Victoria's reign, which she comes to the throne, I think, in 1837. I'm not great with dates, but I think that's when she comes to the throne. But some scholars, like enough that I felt really confident being like, okay, we can count this as Victorian, go all the way back to 1820, which is the end of the Regency. And basically between 1820 and 1837 is this sort of no man's land between the Regency and Victorian. Like those are clear eras. But I'm working in 1830, 1829 to 1830, which is like nothing. What you could call it, probably the most accurate, would be the age of reform, because it's right before this really important reform bill in 1832. However, when you say, oh, I wrote a book, oh, what's it about? Well, it's set in the era of reform. The people are like, I don't know what that means. So I kind of struggled with that early on, even as early as, talking to my agent about this book. Like, I really didn't, it doesn't 1829 and the era, the Great Reform, like those don't summon for people the kind of immediate visual and sensory experience of like that I wanted, I want you to have. Um, so I felt justified, first of all, in that some enough people do count it further back that I could be like, okay, I can call it Victorian with sort of some scholarly justification. But then, because I still felt annoyed at that, and it didn't feel quite enough, so I decided that it's my history. So I put and I've already messed, like in the book, you see, I messed earlier on with like the line of succession. So I figured, why not mess with it now? I decided I put Victoria on the queen early. So she's on the throne at 10 and her mother is regent. And I can wipe my hands of that problem. And internally, the logic all works that it is in fact Victorian, even though in our world she was not on the throne in 1829. It's a lot of work for like one line of the book.
But like it it shows to me like you're dedicated to this idea of history being accurate or like as accurate as it can be in a book with a pterodactyl.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's still a story about a pterodactyl. Yeah, I think I had some really clear guideposts of where I was going to change history and where I wasn't. And for me, it all kind of came down to like, if I introduce this magic, what would change? And that is one of my like, I get annoyed sometimes in historical fantasy where you introduce something magic, right? And it doesn't change things. Like the economy would change, the religion would change, the military would change. All these things kind of second, third order effects, all the dominoes would fall. And so I was very interested in like, if I've introduced this, I have to go adjust all of these things for it. And the who was on the throne, that could change too. But yeah, I tried very hard, and I respect when other authors try very hard. So I was modeling after them, to make sure that things kind of fell in line according to the magic that I was adding, and not just, I didn't want magic to be just vibes. I wanted it to really have meaning in the world that then was this alternate world.
I guess the natural question is why didn't you just fudge when it happens?
Yeah. So I was trying to follow Mary's life. And so she found the actual, and I did fudge it because she found the pterosaur skeleton in December 1828. But I thought that it wouldn't really be fun to be doing a bunch of outdoor adventuring and all the scenes would have to be inside if I set it in winter. So I moved it forward a few months to the spring of 29. which is when William Buckland presented it to the Geological Society. So I felt like that was kind of justified. But yeah, see, I fudged it. I moved like 4 months. But no, I thought about that. But I think Mary died in her 40s.
Oh,
So it felt like, well, I certainly couldn't move past that. I did want to kind of respect the timeline of when things happened in her life, even if the world itself was completely changed.
that makes sense to me. And it feels like honoring her in a way.
Yeah, yeah, I, yeah, and that was always my intention. I'd say I did very much. I do very much want to honor the real Mary. And one of my goals is I hope that people finish this book and they go read Shelley Emling's biography of Mary Anning, the fossil hunter. It's so good. It's like
Ooh.
super thin. It's a quick, easy, beautiful read. There's actually a really good audiobook. Like I hope people want to go learn about the real Mary because she was fascinating and she was inspiring. She's different as a character than my character. My character is so invented, but I really respect and admire the real Mary Anning. I'm not sure I respect and admire my Mary, but maybe at the end of the book.
She's had a hard life. Leave her alone.
She has, and she is working hard. She's like all of us. She's trying to improve herself.
Um, one of the things that I highlighted when I got the NetGalley arc was in chapter 1 or 2, you say something to the effect of like it's Mary speaking kind of to herself, like
Mm-hmm.
she's had to do everything and her mother did nothing. And I was like, whoa, harsh. And then it keeps going. And I was like, okay, maybe not.
Yeah, yeah. So Mary, the real Mary, and I took liberties here in Mary's family. Mary had a brother. They were the only two siblings who lived to adulthood. They had many other children, but Mary loved her father. Her father did teach her to fossil hunt, like she does in my fictional retelling. But her mother was not quite as outside of the picture as I make her. There are only so many threads you can carry. And I was like, I don't also have the space. I probably did too much in this book anyway. I was like, also, I don't have the space to also wrestle with like a complex mother daughter relationship. So let's leave that off the page. But it does seem that it was more of a fraught relationship with Mary and her mother, that the real Mary did seem to feel like she kind of carried the weight of the family.
It also goes to like, it kind of lets Mary in the book have an excuse to be someone who does not need to be with her husband or with her father or with
Mm-hmm.
her chaperone.
Yeah.
Even if she's poorer, there were still kind of like societal expectations for specific like women's work, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I feel like having her parents not be around or maybe alive kind of make it easier to be like, well, she has to be out there doing something, making money.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the like Disney orphan problem. Like if you want to send someone off on a quest, like you can't have their parents being like, "That's a terrible idea." You know, be safe. So it does help a little bit to kind of push them off the page. But yeah, in real life, her father did die when she was quite young, and she really did have to carry the weight with her brother Joseph. But I had to cut him too because there were just uh, too many characters that I wanted to play with, and you know,
That's fair. I mean, who cares about the brother? Gosh.
yeah, I had a first draft where he existed, and it meant it just took forever to get out of Lyme Regis, and
Uh,
it was just too slow, and I was like, this just doesn't work. Like I want them to be on the road to London sooner.
um, so that kind of brings up the idea of women in the era that you're
Yeah,
particularly writing in, and they weren't quite at the suffragette yet. They were leading up to it,
no.
in my opinion,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, gosh, I don't know when women didn't get the right to vote for forever, and I mean, at this point in time, like most men didn't even vote. You didn't have until 32 that Reform Act. Only it was, I don't know, some tiny percentage, it's like 2 or 5% of men could vote for representation. There was just no representation in the political process, which is like crazy to think about, but truly you had no voice. um I look at the writers and I'm like, yeah, that's fair. Like they had no other way to make themselves heard. um but yeah, let's see. So women at the time, yeah, Mary was just so unique. And I take liberties. I think probably one of the areas in which I take more liberties with real history is that I have male female interactions be like a little more informal than they really would have been. Same as like I think about the Bridgerton TV show, right? Like no one actually would have touched each other's hands or, have called people by their first names. But that was one area in which I went a little bit more casual. But anyway, yeah, you were asking about, I got a little off topic
No,
there.
you're good. I just, so I kind of remember a vague conversation when I talked to someone about, she was writing about Jane Austen's books, kind of doing like a
Yeah.
breakdown. And she brought up a few instances of when people around this time period were very much not adhering to norms, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of people just kind of, I either have too much money and don't care, or I have no money and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. If you're not aiming for respectability, you kind of can do what you want. But, but I think the real Mary was
yeah.
aiming for respectability. And my Mary definitely is. She has found a way kind of to get into the field, but she's not in at all. And she does wrestle with like, well, maybe if I had married Henry when we were young, and I would be the wife of a geomagician. For a lot of the real women, that was their way in. William Buckland's wife, her name was actually Mary. I change it to Catherine in the book because it's too confusing how many Marys there were um, for in real life. Um, but Mary Buckland was a renowned illustrator, scientific illustrator. Um, and she married Buckland, presumably because it kept her respected in that field, and able to do kind of the work that she enjoyed. Um, but yeah, it would be, I certainly would not want to be a woman in the 1820s or 30s. You just impossible to be seen as a person almost.
there's this one kind of throwaway line from one of Buckland's daughters where they're like, I'm so jealous that you get to go to the
Mm-hmm.
Geomagician Society building.
Yeah.
Nobody else is allowed in.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's, a moment that I really enjoyed writing was when I have all the women get to come to that sort of reception at Palmaneus House. And, I just imagining not being welcome in any of those spaces is, not that STEM is super welcoming to women now, but at least you can go in the buildings usually.
Um, so that kind of brings me to this idea of the magic system that you have playing
Yeah.
here. And so we see a lot of the word reliquary in it.
Mhm.
How do people access magic? What is magic in this world?
Okay, so um, basically, and whether this is true or not, the people in the book believe that you sort of generate that magic is sort of a gift from God that everyone generates a little bit every day, sort of as holy breath. Basically, would be sort of the kind of classical way of describing it. And everyone generates a little bit of magic every day that can be stored or collected in items that you wear. And anything can be a relic. And yeah, as you mentioned, like it comes from reliquary. Historically, in my history, it used to be a church function. So, sort of
Mhm.
my equivalent to the break between the Protestant and Church of, or the Church of England and Catholic Church, is sort of the idea that they took this function of sort of blessing relics as a church function as part of the Eucharist, and they took it out of that and made it a solely secular economic process. But that is where the word comes from, is reliquary. Um, Man, when I talk about it, I'm like, oh, I really did think this through. Good for me. Um, so, so relics, you can, anything can be a relic. You just sort of wear it, and it collects your day's allotment of magic, basically, and can store up until it's full. But some things are better than others. So, like, fabric is really poor; it doesn't collect magic very well. Wood is a little bit better. Gems are good, solid. Metal, same thing. But fossils are really good relics. And we don't know why in book one, but that is something that they sort of investigate in book two. But fossils, they kind of discover before the book that fossils make really good relics. So that obviously empowers the Geomagical Society quite a bit, because then they, are much more in play politically and economically. Yeah. But what happens, of course, and this is the one thing I was really interested in, is that I've always felt, whenever I read a fantasy book, I'm like, if there is magic, someone is going to try to make money off of it. That's just how societies work. So how would people try to make money off of this system? Once you've like pulled it out of the church and made it a secular function, like what happens then? um, you know, Obviously they're going to figure out how to buy and sell it, because you can, in this system, use, or in this magic system, use relics stored and made kind of by other people. So you can make a relic and I can buy it or take it, I guess, and use your magic. But you can't get a ton of magic, right? Like a full relic, a full little bone only gives you a little bit. You can light a candle, you can fix a shoe, you could maybe, tie a knot extra tight, things like that. Just little household kind of spells. But the rich, when they're stockpiling thousands of relics that they've purchased from the poor who are selling them, because they're in poverty and this is a way they can make money, you can do almost anything with enough. Yeah, so that's kind of, I think that's pretty much all the pieces. How they're made, they can be bought and sold, anyone can use them. And then there are people who can do magic with no relic, and those are witches. And so Lucy, as we mentioned before, who's the sort of political activist, who's vehemently against this system of buying and selling magic. She thinks it's just like abhorrent. She can do magic without the relic.
Um, so
How's
you were
that? Did I
talking
miss
about
anything?
what?
Did I miss anything
So
in the
the
magic
only other
system?
thing is how they sell magic, but like I don't know that we want to get into that because it's a long it goes into other parts of the story that I don't want to spoil for folks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me
So,
see. Yeah, you go to like a person, basically there's like a guild that kind of magic-fies relics. So I can like make, you know, here's a stapler. If I take it to the person who's like a relic chemist in what's called the slicks, I can be like, please make my stapler a relic. And they would make it a relic. And then I wear it on a necklace and I can store magic in this until it's full. And then I start wearing a new one. Um, yeah.
and they are typically the people that buy and then turn around and resell the magic
Yes.
full relics.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like the middleman in the whole system. And
Um,
they're kind of a pseudo government, um, what we would, if we, a public private partnership, as it were.
I think Lucy mentions that they put a cap on how much they're allowed to charge for these or something.
Yes, which is one of the big political points. in the book is that there's a rate that is set by the guild, set by the government, set by parliament, and so you can't undercut or like you can't recruit more customers by offering more money for their relics. There's no
Mhm.
competition, um, which means that if the rate is low, which it is, and the only way that you can make any kind of money because you've been put out of a job by the textile looms, you know, that's a pittance.
It really is, and it's shocking that, you know, I would still do it. I would still sell stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when you like it, really, it's um, and that was really one of the ideas I was interested in. Is like, what? How do you reform systems that maybe are unequal or bad, but they're like the best you can come up with right now? What do you replace them with? What if that's worse? Like all those things were very interesting to me. They're interesting to me in real life. The real life sort of politics always are obviously like seep into the book. But it's easier to play with in fiction. I can control the variables in a way that they're just more, it's slightly simpler.
Um, One of the last things about the book that is kind of important is the Inquisition.
Mm-hmm.
So because there is legitimate magic in this world, you had to change how the witch trials might have played out,
Yeah,
which I thought was a fascinating change.
yeah, yeah. So like I said, kind of, I had to think through the dominoes of everything backward and forward of like, okay, so if there had been magic, how would that have changed sort of the church? And I came up with all kinds of, I mean, some of it's kind of sprinkled through the book, but a lot of it I had to take out. So I was like, no one really needs all of this. Like, how I have written what would Constantine have said and what would the Council of Nicaea have declared, about magic. But yeah, the Inquisition and the Inquisitors are basically a government, church government function in England, not necessarily the whole of Great Britain, because the Church of England obviously is only English. So they are a Church of England function um, that sets out to ensure that sorcery, and all of this hinges on your translation of a couple Bible verses. Do not suffer a witch to live, things like that, references to necromancy. And I did have a lot of fun combing through the Old Testament for these ones because they are by far the most fun verses. Um, you know, things about spirits and demons and witches. Um, but all of their sort of in-world theology hinges on those translation of how they're going to justify these verses and allow magic as something that the church allows. And so the division is basically there's relic magic, which the church has decided is fine. There's witchery, like doing magic without a relic, which they've decided back in Anne Boleyn's day, because she decided that it's like fine. They don't love it. Like people don't think it's, but like they're okay with it. They don't think it's great, but like they're okay with it. And then there's sorcery. And really the inquisitors are all about like stopping sorcery. And so I did really have to wrestle with like, okay, if you have some kind of like religious authority, but you've allowed magic to be fine. And I do think that religious institutions tend to find something to condemn. And so I felt like, okay, they're not going to let it all go. And if they want to claim that, the if they want to kind of go with inherency of scripture interpretation, like they have to pick something to be against. They have to pick something to say that these verses are about. And so they choose in world sorcery. And so sorcery is magic words. And so it's basically doing sort of precise spell work with verbal words. The other magics are softer. They're more intuitive, right? They're more like, I want this candle to light, the candle lights. Sorcery is said to be, by the people in the book, sort of usurping the power of God, the word of God. And I really did like one of the most fun parts of this was taking sort of what I have absorbed over, a childhood of evangelicalism, which I'm not an evangelical now, proud Methodist and affirming, and I like women in leadership and um, all those things. Definitely have ended up still a Christian, but a progressive Christian. But one of the most interesting parts for me was playing with theology and trying to add magic in. And so, yeah, I was really interested in like, the using the idea of the word of God
Mhm.
as, and like original sin, putting those concepts, applying magic to them.
I loved how you played with it though, because it feels very real to me. So you have
Yeah.
her mentor in this, Bancourt, right? Ban
Buckland. Yeah.
Buckland.
Hmm. You're
Words.
fine.
Buckland. He reminds me a lot of like Darwin in a sense that Darwin was deeply religious and was
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
don't know if I should talk about evolution or like things that
Yeah.
I've seen until, well, later in his life. But I like that you play with this. Like some characters are very like the
Yeah.
church is right.
Well, it was hard for me to imagine writing this book without really like taking the faith of the geologists like really earnestly, because like they cared so much about, like, they were working so hard, they were having so many conversations about scripture and their finds. And like that's what they cared about. That's what they talked about. That's what they were writing about and lecturing about. And like that was their obsession.
Yeah.
And so to me, it felt really disingenuous if I was going to write this book and like skip over all of that. I felt like if I was going to take them seriously, I also needed to take that part of many of them seriously because, like, yeah, they were just wrestling with it. And in a way that's hard for us to imagine. I think it's really hard for us to, I don't know, maybe if you're like a new earther, it's like the same kind of really hard for you to reconcile. But like for me, evolution and like the extinction of species, like that's so obvious. I'm like, oh yeah, duh. Like it's really difficult to imagine how they didn't even have the framework for this. And so what they had was this religious framework of what they believed. And, I think I give them a lot of credit, really, most of them, for how earnestly and sincerely they tried to follow the evidence. I would say I probably had to make many of the paleontologists like more regressive than they were. Like in real life, many of them were very much like, well, the evidence doesn't seem to match what scripture says. I guess we go with the evidence. I think I actually, for conflict's sake, had to make them a little bit more conservative than many of them were. But yeah, I just didn't feel like I could write this book, a story set in this time, without actually wrestling with sort of the religious faith of these men. They were all men. Except for Mary. And Mary herself even like was, it's kind of one of the like known facts about her biography is that her religious faith was really important to her. She was a religious dissenter, so she wasn't a member of the Church of England, which like is not helpful if you want to advance, right? Like you weren't able to, not that she could have held public office, but like she couldn't have done a lot of things or had a lot of respect, but she kind of continued for many years in that sort of non-Church of England church, sort of out of presumably, her own devoutness.
Mhm.
So yeah, again, that was like one of the things I just wanted to honor in her real life. I didn't want to make her like a before her time agnostic, when it was just so central to all that they were doing.
I
Um,
sometimes feel like folks nowadays don't reconcile the two. You're either a scientist or you're religious, but you can't be both for some reason, which is untrue. Like, you can absolutely have a belief in a higher power and still be interested in figuring things out in your natural environment. Um,
yeah,
so that's
yeah,
what I
and
really enjoyed.
yeah, yeah, and I think that it's one of those things that like if your faith can't bend, it's gonna break. And the but I do think it so one of the weirder things that I did in researching this book was because it was hard for me to put myself in the shoes of these people who didn't understand things like that again feel so obvious like evolution. I actually ended up reading a lot of like creationist websites
Mhm,
where they try to justify like why are there dinosaur bones if we don't think that there were really dinosaurs,
mhm,
or like why does the fossil record look like this if we really think that the earth is only so old, and like the things that they take literally, those are not reconcilable with
yeah.
the science. And so it's one of those things where like, well, if that is how you come to it, okay, that you're gonna have trouble there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very interesting to read those websites and alarming because some of those people are very high up in our government.
It can be scary, and that's why I like that Lucy's there in this book too, though, because the Prometheans are like trying to stop people from being exploited at the very basics
Yeah,
of their job, their like core belief.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I haven't even talked at all about like the Industrial Revolution, but I mean, this is really, we are 1829 is like in the explosion of the
Yeah.
Industrial Revolution. Um, and, just so many people lost their livelihoods. And I did really want to, and to me, it's just such a clear analog for the moment that we're at, kind of pre what they're saying, like everyone's going to lose their jobs to AI.
Yeah.
It feels really like an obvious parallel. And finding who is fighting for people, I think is, just one of the ways that I kind of like give myself hope. Um, but yeah, Lucy, I think she serves many like roles in the story, and she makes lots of mistakes too. But
Well, she's human.
yeah, yeah, and
Um,
I didn't want anyone to have the right answer. I wanted everyone to have an answer, and I wanted them all to be in conflict because that's real life.
they still manage to work together, though. I really want people nowadays to do so.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, yeah, and that really is like these people have respect and love for each other, even if they kind of all see the answer to society's ills really differently.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're working on the second book, or you finished the second book?
So I have done a draft that needs a lot of work. So I'm kind of going to be working on that over the next couple of months. But yeah, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but it continues Mary's adventures with some of the same characters and then some new characters in some new settings and London because it always circles back to London with the Geomagicians.
Well, I imagine it's probably because they're greatly from England.
Yeah, and we're still pre-trains, which was a problem for me. Again, like why
Goodness.
didn't I just move the time? Like it would be so much easier if anyone could hop on a train.
Or like a boat that's gonna be more than 30 people on it.
Yeah, they did have like some steamships, so anytime I can, I'm putting people on steamships.
Do you know how many books you're going to try and write in the series, or how many you've been contracted for?
Yeah, just two. So it is a duology. I feel pretty satisfied with where Mary's story would end at the end of book two. I just feel like the world, before it gets too big, before the conflicts get too big, like what else can be done with geology and paleontology? Like, I think her story wraps up pretty well in book two. If I ever returned to the world, I would probably return and follow Lucy. Because like Lucy's conflicts, like Lucy's interests, I feel like have a little bit more legs.
Yeah.
Especially as the Industrial Revolution like rages on. Um, so I have that kind of in my head, but there are lots of other things I'd like to write first.
Um, this was your first published novel, though, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah, this is going to be my first book. Yeah.
Congratulations. I love it a lot.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, there are several that live on my hard drive that will not see the light of day. But it was lots of trial and error and failure. And so, but I'm really excited that this is going to be the first one. I think I feel really proud of it. Already I'm 2 years away from when I sold it. So I
Yeah.
think I see things already that I would change, but it's too late for that.
Don't think about it.
Um,
Just don't think about it.
I know, right? But yeah, I'm really pleased. Fantasy is my like first love, and I'm thrilled to be kind of debuting in fantasy. And yeah, I'm really excited for readers to find it. And I think the readers who I've tried not to read reviews, but it does seem like the readers who like it really like it. If you don't like it, you probably really don't like it. But if you,
Yeah.
I think that it's maybe it's a little more polarizing than I knew. But I'm excited for its readers to find it.
I think it's more scholarly than a lot of pulpy or very popular fantasy would be, which is not a bad thing in my opinion. But I
Yeah, I
think
feel
that
like
might be the polarization.
my goal, and I hope that I accomplish this. I wanted to write a book that made you feel smart, but was fun.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be fun, but I want you to feel smart, and then I want you to go to Wikipedia. Like those were my goals.
I'm actually really
So
stoked to pick up the autobiography about Mary, or the autobiography for the biography about
yeah,
Mary.
I feel like it's on my shelf. Um, it's like it's really good. And I actually read it and then at some point I listened to the audiobook too. Or maybe I listened to the audiobook and then I read it. Anyway, I referenced it all the time. But it is really, really good. And there aren't many biographies of her. I think there are maybe two. I mean, we don't have that many sources about her life. Like we have a lot of sources about Gideon Mantell, and William Buckland in particular. Those two stand out to me. And Owens, who's a little bit later than this time period, but he's the one who comes up with the word dinosaur.
Yeah.
So like they have more biographies, but there just aren't that many like letters from Mary or things that could make a biography. But yeah, the Shelley M one is really good.
Perfect. Now I have more reading.
Yeah, and then Tracy Chevalier did a historical fiction without magic about Mary too. And I think it's Mary Anning and Elizabeth Philpott, her real friend.
Okay.
I have not read it because I had this idea like 10, 12 years ago, and I was like, I can't read anything about Mary Anning that might like taint me but I do know that exists, and people like it.
Perfect. Um, where can people either follow you or find out what you're doing?
Yeah, so I am the best right now, which is not saying much, at Instagram. It's Jennifer Mandula, JenniferMandula. And then I do have a website that I try to keep pretty updated, which is jennifermandula.com. Um, those are the two places that I reliably am. When I feel like I have a bit that needs to come out, it goes on Threads at the
Okay.
same username, but really I just workshop my would-be stand-up comedy there, so it's not great.
Now I have to get Threads because I've been very reluctant to download this app
So
or to
literally
include
I
it.
like if I have a funny thought, I like post it and then I dip. Like I do not scroll there.
Um,
I'm just like, here's my shower thought that I think is funny.
I
and
love
then I go
shower
away.
thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where can anyone buy signed copies at a local bookstore from you?
Yes. So the best bookstore is Max Backs in Cleveland, Macs Backs, and I will be doing signed copies through them. And
And
then
they
I
have
do have
already,
a pre-order campaign
yeah.
too. So anywhere you pre-order, I will send you a signed book plate, a sticker of Ajax, which is really cute, and a print of Mary and Henry. And that's on my website.
I love that you're doing all of this. It feels like a lot for to do while you're still writing another book or like trying to.
Yeah, I got a lot of FOMO because people were doing pre-order campaigns and their stuff looked so cool. And I was like, I want to do one. So I put
I
it together.
absolutely got the pre-order. Are you kidding me? I
Well, get
want
your
that
sticker.
sticker.
They're so
Yeah.
cute. Yeah, I had those made and I love them. They're like so cute.
All right. So Instagram, Jennifer Mandula, and Max Books or Max
Max backs, yeah.
Backs. Okay,
Like I think it's
perfect.
like Max paperbacks, but just backs.
It's not confusing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I hope people like Mary and Ajax and you know, Henry and all their friends.
I
I
think they're going to
do.
love it.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
If anyone watching or listening has enjoyed this, I really hope that you follow UpperPen or subscribe, whichever you have the option of, and then leave me a comment about what your type of historical fantasy is, the stuff you go to, because I really enjoy this era, and even a little bit later in Victor or Edwardian, but I really don't know anything else, so I'd like suggestions. Um, and I hope that everybody has a lovely, lovely night. Bye.